Joel Rubin is the president of the Washington Strategy Group. He joins us via Skype from Washington, D.C. It's been interesting, isn't it, that the senators don't necessarily all agree on how or on what the next steps exactly have to be. What do you think they should do to be effective on this?
So that is typical in the legislative process, but right now what has happened is unprecedented in American foreign policy. Rarely do we see a Congress from both sides of the aisle so strongly rebuke the president on a core national security concern. So next steps are going to be driven in many ways by the calendar, and here in Washington, the congressional calendar is only has a couple more weeks at the high end in this Congress, and then there's a new Congress. So some senators, like Senator Corker, he'll be gone after this month. He's retiring. He may want to move a bill, some legislation, either on the appropriations bill or potentially with the Yemen War Powers resolution, to try to move that through Congress to the president's desk. And that is what could really mobilize and catalyze unity of action once some type of legislation, some piece, is actually on the floor.
What is the likelihood, though, of President Trump changing his position on the Khashoggi affair?
It's a very complicated thing to understand right now where the president is coming from, because he did have this CIA assessment weeks ago. So what the senators are reacting to today is not new information. So the White House has had weeks to try to figure out what it is that they want to do, and they have stayed the course. I think personally that when the new Congress comes in, there will be hearings in the House, because the Republicans are unlikely to do hearings in the Senate on this issue. And those hearings could stray off of the Khashoggi topic directly and into questions of who is communicating with him, with Saudi Arabia. What were the messages between Jared Kushner in the White House and Mohammed bin Salman during that 2-week period after Jamal Khashoggi's killing? And these could become very uncomfortable. And at that point, we'll really see whether or not President Trump has the staying power to keep rejecting what is a consensus view now, or if he's willing to take the political hits to him and his family that will be continuing most likely in the next Congress.
How unusual is it in your experience that an issue like this should continue to cause heat for the White House? I mean, the journalists and the senators, no one has kind of given up on this story in the way that perhaps they might have done on other issues.
That's right. This is clearly a surprise. I served in the Senate. I also served in the State Department handling the House of Representatives for Secretary of State Kerry. And political issues come and go, and sometimes of core national security importance they would maintain, like the Iran nuclear deal, which had a long shelf life, clearly, but it was a policy issue. This is a very discrete political issue with human rights ramifications, but it's how it's played out. It's sort of brought together all the strains of concern about President Trump's foreign policy, his closeness to Saudi Arabia, the opacity of that relationship, questions about Iran, questions about, frankly, what is the American position in the Middle East going forward. And because of that, and because Turkey, as a third player in this drama, has continually let out information, and because the bungling of the message early on and the inability of Saudi Arabia to come clean early on led to doubts about what happened, that's why this hasn't gone away. And now it's a political issue for President Trump, and he has Congress clearly staking an argument opposed to him, which makes for great drama and means that it is not going to go away anytime soon.
What about the issue of Yemen? I mean, we know that some of the senators are linking the Khashoggi affair with their support or not, or lack of support for the war in Yemen. But if there is a peace process ongoing in the next few days, does that then take the heat off Saudi Arabia on that particular issue and give the president a sort of bit of space on the Mohammed bin Salman issue?
Well, we've seen on the Yemen catastrophe, from a Washington perspective, over the past year or so, a growing momentum of opposition to American military support for Saudi Arabia's efforts there. And that has gained momentum independently of the Khashoggi affair. But now the Khashoggi affair has sort of brought it all together in a very specific individual, an example that can really enable senators to clarify for voters and constituents and the media what is at stake here. So regarding Yemen, if the peace process evolves properly, that's one question. But what's America's role? And we saw a vote in the Senate a week ago, a bipartisan vote opposing a continued American role in that war. There will be a fuller vote this week, possibly early next week, about it. And the American people are looking at Saudi Arabia differently now and wondering, why are we supporting this kind of a government in this war that's leading to millions of people being starved? So the momentum's only going to grow for American pressure to end this. And that is going to have an impact on the ground, and it's going to have an impact on the Trump administration's policy.
Joel Rubin, thank you very much.